"Grab the clamp! Hurry!" the resident screamed. The operating room erupted in chaos, blood spurting violently. A small nurse stood silently, being pushed aside. "You're just a nurse. Get out of the way." But when the artery burst, she lunged forward, her hands clamping precisely, faster than any doctor. The chief surgeon froze, whispering, "That's not civilian training." Anna Keller, 27 years old. Small stature, brown hair tied back, neat, gentle eyes, working as a surgical nurse at the city hospital. Every day, Anna quietly performed acts of kindness that nobody noticed, placing extra blankets on shivering patients during cold nights, leaving her night shift meal for hungry residents, cleaning operating room windows after her shift ended. The resident doctors often mocked her. "You're just a nurse. Hand us instruments and stay out of medical decisions." One evening, emergency trauma. Multiple injury patient, blood pooling on the operating table. The resident's hands shook, his clamp clattered to the floor, monitors screaming urgent alarms. Anna stood in the corner being shouted at, "Get back! This isn't nurse work!" An artery ruptured, chaos spreading throughout the room. Anna rushed forward, her hands finding the exact bleeding point, faster than everyone else. The operating room fell silent, only the patient's heart beating softly, returning to rhythm. But Anna's response wasn't luck. Her movements had the precision of someone who'd done this hundreds of times under pressure. The way she positioned her fingers to compress the artery. The way she maintained pressure while reaching for supplies with her other hand. The way she anticipated the next step before anyone else even understood what was happening. These weren't skills learned from textbooks or hospital training programs. Her hands moved with muscle memory carved by repetition under extreme conditions. Real conditions where hesitation meant death. The residents watched in stunned silence. They'd all been through medical school, completed rotations, passed examinations, but none of them had moved with Anna's instinctive precision. "How did you know exactly where to compress?" one resident asked afterward. Anna's answer was simple. "You feel for the pulse points and work backward." But that wasn't the whole truth. The real truth was that Anna had learned trauma medicine in places where there were no backup systems, no senior physicians to call for help, no luxury of time to think through procedures. She'd learned in environments where the first response had to be perfect, because there might not be a second chance. The other nurses began watching Anna more carefully. They noticed things they'd missed before. The way she anticipated medical emergencies before symptoms became obvious. The way she positioned equipment for maximum efficiency. The way she never seemed surprised by complications. "She's different," one nurse observed. "She reacts like she's seen everything before." During quiet moments, Anna would sit alone in the break room, her hands steady but her eyes distant, looking at something the others couldn't see. A senior nurse would later recall, her hands shook from exhaustion, but when she touched that artery, they were precise, like someone who'd practiced thousands of times in battlefield conditions. Anna Keller wasn't just a nurse who'd gotten lucky in a crisis. She was someone with a hidden past that nobody suspected. Chief Surgeon Marcus Hale, 55 years old, walked into the chaotic operating room. He froze when he saw Anna controlling the arterial bleeding in seconds. He whispered, "That's not civilian training." The entire surgical team went silent, nobody daring to respond. The patient was saved, monitors stabilizing back to normal. After surgery, the resident stammered, I don't understand how she did that." Marcus studied Anna for a long time, eyes showing both amazement and suspicion. Rumors began spreading. The chief surgeon just publicly acknowledged a nurse saved the surgery. Her hands don't move like a civilian's. Another shift brought another crisis. Patient in cardiac arrest. Doctors confused about protocol. Anna performed chest compressions with unusual technique. Deeper, stronger, more precise. The patient came back to life. Marcus watched from behind, observing every movement, becoming more certain. These were battlefield reflexes. The compressions Anna performed weren't standard CPR. They were combat-specific techniques designed for trauma situations where normal protocols failed. Her hand placement was different. Her compression depth was calculated for maximum blood flow to brain and vital organs. Her timing incorporated breathing patterns that most civilian medical professionals never learned. "Where did she train?" Marcus asked the nursing supervisor. "Standard nursing school, local clinical rotations, nothing unusual in her file." But Marcus had seen these techniques before. During his own military service as a young doctor, he'd worked with combat medics who'd developed advanced trauma protocols for battlefield conditions. Anna's movements matched that training perfectly. During the next emergency, a motorcycle accident with multiple trauma, Anna's response was immediate and professional. While doctors were still assessing the situation, she'd already established priorities, controlled bleeding, and prepared for the most likely complications. Her hands moved independently, as if they had their own memory of similar situations. "She's triaging like she's done this 1,000 times, one resident observed. "In combat zones," Marcus muttered under his breath. But Anna never volunteered information about her background. She just continued working with quiet competence that made everyone else feel like amateurs. The nursing staff began deferring to her judgment during emergencies, even though she held no supervisory position. "Anna just knows things," they'd explain to new staff. "When she tells you to prepare for something, you prepare." Her instincts were uncanny. She'd start setting up equipment for complications before symptoms appeared. She'd position herself in the exact location where help would be needed most. It wasn't luck. It was experience. Marcus decided to test his theory. During a complex surgery, he deliberately created a situation that required advanced trauma response. Anna's reaction was immediate and perfect. No hesitation, no confusion, no need for instruction. She moved like someone who'd handled similar situations many times under much worse conditions. After the surgery, Marcus approached her privately. "Anna, I need to ask you something." She looked at him with those quiet eyes that had seen too much. "Your training. It's not what's in your personnel file, is it?" Anna didn't answer directly. "Does it matter?" "The patients are alive." "It matters because what you're doing requires specialized knowledge that civilian programs don't teach." Still no response from Anna. A recovering veteran in the ICU would later tell his family, "That nurse, she was in Afghanistan. I recognized those hands. You don't forget the people who saved your life." A fellow doctor who'd served in Fallujah admitted privately, "That's exactly the technique I saw in combat zones, not in any civilian classroom." The truth was becoming clear. Anna Keller had a military medical background that she'd chosen to keep hidden. But why? During the hospital staff meeting, several doctors objected. "She's overstepping her authority, endangering patients." Marcus stood up, his voice carrying authority. "No, 3 patients are alive specifically because of her actions." He placed old documentation on the table. Combat Medical Reflexes Manual, training reserved for special operations medics. Everyone turned to look at Anna, her face calm, remaining silent. An older physician whispered, "She's been somewhere else. Can't just be a regular nurse." A recovering veteran in the ICU woke up and recognized her. She was in Afghanistan. I've seen those hands before. The rumors became truth. Anna had been a combat medic attached to Special Operations Forces, but chose to leave that life, living quietly in civilian hospitals. Marcus muttered to himself, "I've seen hands like that, but only where blood and bullets mix together." The meeting room fell completely silent. Nobody saying another word. But the story was more complex than simple military service. During a private conversation, Marcus finally got Anna to talk. How many deployments? 3 tours, Afghanistan and Iraq. Special Operations Support? Anna nodded. Forward surgical teams. We worked with units that couldn't wait for helicopters, couldn't rely on established medical facilities. The full picture emerged. Anna hadn't been a regular military medic. She'd been part of specialized teams that provided advanced trauma care in active combat zones. Her training included techniques that weren't taught in civilian programs: emergency surgery under fire, trauma response when supplies were limited, life-saving procedures when normal protocols weren't possible. "Why did you leave?" Marcus asked. "Because I realized I was better at saving lives than ending them. I wanted to focus on healing instead of combat medicine." "But you kept your skills." "You never forget training like that. You just hope you never need it again." Marcus understood. Anna had transitioned from military to civilian medicine, but her experience remained. "The techniques you're using, they're not dangerous. They're just more advanced than what we typically see." Anna looked at him directly. "I use whatever works. I don't care if it's military or civilian technique. I care about keeping people alive." The hospital administration had to make a decision. Anna was technically violating protocols by performing procedures beyond her official scope of practice, but she was also saving lives that might have been lost otherwise. Marcus advocated strongly for her. "She's not endangering patients. She's providing expert care that none of us can match." A review of her cases showed perfect success rates. Every patient she'd treated with advanced techniques had survived and recovered fully. "This creates a precedent problem," the hospital administrator worried. "This creates a life-saving resource," Marcus countered. "We'd be foolish to waste it." The compromise was elegant. Anna would be given expanded scope of practice under emergency conditions, with Marcus taking responsibility for her advanced interventions. But Anna had conditions of her own. "I don't want special recognition. I don't want my military background publicized. I just want to help people." The agreement was kept quiet. Anna continued working as a nurse, but with unofficial authority to use her advanced skills when necessary. Other medical staff learned to recognize when Anna shifted into combat medic mode. Her posture would change, her movements would become more purposeful, her voice would carry different authority. During those moments, everyone stepped back and let her work. "She transforms," one resident observed, "like flipping a switch between civilian nurse and military medic." But Anna never lost her gentleness with patients. Her advanced skills made her more effective, not less caring. Young nurses began seeking her mentorship, not knowing about her military background, but recognizing her expertise. "How do you stay so calm during emergencies?" they'd ask. "You remember that panic doesn't help anyone," Anna would reply. "You focus on what you can control and do it perfectly." Marcus wrote in his private notes, "I've witnessed hundreds of medical emergencies, but I've never seen someone transition so seamlessly between combat trauma response and compassionate patient care." The hospital had gained something rare: a medical professional with combat-tested skills and a civilian's heart for healing. Anna Keller had found her perfect role, using warrior training to save lives in peacetime. No medals were given, no awards ceremony held. Internal reports didn't mention Anna's name. But during every shift after that, nobody shouted, "Nurse, get out of the way!" Resident doctors began quietly looking to Anna for signals before making critical decisions. One late night, Marcus found Anna in the cafeteria. She sat alone, bowl of cold soup, looking exhausted. He sat down, placing a cup of hot coffee in front of her. He spoke softly. "I won't ask where you came from. I just want you to know. This place needs you." Anna smiled tiredly. "I don't need anyone to know my history. I just want patients to live another day." The conversation was comfortable, respectful. Two medical professionals who understood that their work wasn't about recognition or glory. "Anna," Marcus said finally, "would you consider teaching some advanced trauma techniques to our staff?" "Teaching what?" "The procedures you've been using. Not everyone needs to know the military applications, but everyone should know how to save lives when standard protocols aren't enough." Anna considered this carefully. "I can share what might help people, but I won't glorify combat medicine." Fair enough. From that point forward, Anna became an informal mentor to younger medical staff. She taught advanced techniques disguised as emergency protocols and crisis management procedures. But she never revealed their military origins. She just focused on the life-saving applications. Young nurses would approach her during breaks. "How do you make such quick decisions under pressure?" Anna's answer was always practical. "You prepare for everything you can, and when something unexpected happens, you adapt quickly." The emergency department developed a reputation for exceptional trauma care. Other hospitals began asking what they were doing differently. The answer was simple, but couldn't be publicized. They had a former combat medic teaching everyone advanced techniques. Anna continued her quiet service, extra blankets for cold patients, shared meals with hungry residents, clean windows after long shifts. But now her colleagues understood that these small kindnesses came from someone with extraordinary capabilities. She'd chosen to use her warrior training for healing rather than combat. The combination made her irreplaceable. Marcus would sometimes watch Anna work and marvel at the contradiction. Someone trained for war who dedicated herself completely to peace. "Why do you think she really left the military?" a nurse asked him once. Marcus thought for a moment. "Because she realized that saving lives was more important than taking them." Anna had found her mission, teaching others to save lives the way she'd learned to save them. Some people wear ordinary clothes and live quietly, but carry within them an entire past that nobody knows. When the boundary between life and death appears, those instincts emerge, saving others in decisive moments. Anna Keller was just a nurse, but her hands were never ordinary. The chief surgeon saw it and whispered, "That's not civilian training." Her story reminds us that expertise comes from unexpected places. The quiet professional doing background work might be exactly the expert you need when everything goes wrong. Around us are hidden heroes with skills we never suspected. Former soldiers working as teachers, ex-pilots driving trucks, combat medics serving as civilian nurses. They don't seek recognition. They just want to use their abilities to help others. The next time you see someone performing what looks like ordinary work with extraordinary competence, remember Anna. Remember that the most capable people often choose the quietest roles because they understand that service matters more than status. True heroism works silently, saves lives without fanfare, and measures success in heartbeats preserved rather than battles won. If you believe in quiet stories like this one, leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to SN Quiet Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.